Hey, what's going on? This is probably day 3, 4, maybe 40, 500. I have no idea, to be honest, of me working on getting this seat actually installed. I was real busy this last week at work. Didn't have any chance to work on it. Spare like an hour or two here and there. But let's kind of catch up, see where we're at. So, I've been knocking out a bunch of the kind of tedious stuff earlier, but I finished the patch panel. As you can see, it's kind of in here. It's not the prettiest looking thing, but it'll be functional. And now what I've been doing is I made this cross piece to sit in here. And so these two are gonna kind of form the base that then the seat frame rail that runs along those is going to bolt or weld to. I haven't fully decided if I'm gonna try and get fancy and do nut zerts or something, or just kind of do some stitch welds and just put it in. But what I've been working at is I found right about there makes these two, I can't really hold it, but these two line up pretty well. It's pretty close. And then also you can see that 0.2 right there. That's almost perfectly level with the vehicle. So I'm happy where that's at. My plan with this right now is to just tack it in. Let's put a couple tack welds probably on each side to at least get it in place, and so it's not gonna move around. And then I'm actually scratch that. So my plan right now is essentially get this thing located exactly where I want it to be, and then I'm gonna make a couple more little of these support tabs to go to weld to it. So the floor, because this is a main structure right under here, so that it's supported in the middle by those tabs, and then that'll take some of the load off of the sides. Because to be honest, I've never done this. I don't really know how secure it needs to be, but I'd rather overdo it than have like a weld or something crack on the side and then have to figure that out during the race. That wouldn't be good. So let's get to it. So this weld, if you're wondering why there's so much smoke coming off it, it's because I forgot to turn the gas on to the torch. So that first weld was it with no gas flow. I realized what happened, turned gas back on. Now I'm actually getting proper welds. Another thing, if you haven't figured it out yet, is how monotonous this fabrication can be. Because you gotta check, recheck, check again to make sure nothing's moved, everything's still in the same spot. And another thing I'm figuring out as I'm doing this is the difference between welding on a table and then welding in all these weird positions where you're just trying to figure out how to get the torch and the filler rod in there. And being able to weld in uncomfortable positions is almost a whole nother skill. So I appreciate the guys who can like get in and weld cages from all these crazy angles and stuff. I'm starting to figure it out. Some of these welds are pretty ugly, but you know, it's all learning, and I do enjoy doing this stuff. So hopefully I just get better as time goes on. that should be completely welded in. The other thing I noticed was a crack forming right here, and that's just this floor pan got way too thin right here, especially after kind of grinding down this weld. What I'm gonna do is just put a little patch panel here and just kind of weld it in, because I tried going real light, and as soon as you put anything on that floor pan right there, it just burns straight through it. It's crazy. I don't think it's gonna be very structural, but we'll kind of let that cool, and then we might start test fitting the seat a little bit. Welcome back to day 798 of me trying to get this seat in. In seriousness, it's been a couple weeks, I believe, since I really last worked on it. In the meantime, basically, I got this tube bender in and got a weld together kit, so I have spent what time I had putting this tube bender together. However, it's together. It's a Rogue Fabrication unit. Looks pretty nice. I've yet to use it, don't have any tube yet, but at least I'm ready now to start the cage whenever I get tube and get around to it. Because if any of you know that have families, time can be tough to find sometimes. Basically what we have going on right here is me trying to kind of work with this, but this floor pan is so thin, and there's undercoating on the bottom of it that it's real easy to burn through, especially at the edge here. And then that undercoating just makes welding nearly impossible. And as you can see, it kind of was like a crack that formed, and then I kind of like wire wheeled it, and then I hit it with a drill on both ends of the crack. I saw a long time ago that if you have a crack forming, you drill the end of it like over top of the end of the crack, and that should stop it from progressing. But anyway, I think what I'm gonna try and do is just weld up these ends as best I can, and then basically I bought some, it might have been 22 gauge, but it's pretty thin, weldable, basically sheet metal. And I'm just gonna start making real rough patches and just welding over this. So I'm not even going to try and weld this shut. I'm just going to try and weld the ends and then take a patch and just weld over it. But first I got to prep it, clean up all this rust so that I can get at least a halfway decent weld on these things. All I really care about are the ones that go through to the bottom of the car, like some of these, like these holes right here and this side go into a reinforcement area, so it's kind of boxed in, so I don't really care that much about welding those up. But let's get to work and we can get this gosh darn seat in, because I really want to get the seat in. Basically what I'm gonna do is I have these mostly spot welded on. This one I went a little harder on just because of that big crack underneath it. But I'm gonna take some JB seam weld and just seam weld, or geez, I'm just gonna go around the edges and kind of seal up all these patches, because I don't need to fully weld them up. I don't really care what this looks like. The one thing I am going to do while I'm here is probably at least weld in, I'm gonna start figuring it out, is some spots for the racing harness. So we're probably getting a 6-point, and with the 6-point that means there's 2 over the shoulder, 2 that go by your hips, and then 2 that go between your legs, and then those 2, this is roughly the center of the seat, this mark right here. And so according to the general rules, you want 4 to 6 inches between the mounting points on those 2 seat belts, the sub harnesses. So what I'm gonna do is just make a rough line down the middle here, go 2 to 3 inches on each side, and then I think I'm gonna weld in a piece of 1/8 bar stock in that 2 to 3 inch range on each side. Just hit it with some welds quick, and then we should be bolting it in, so I'm not too worried about it being super secure since it will be bolted in. So let's get working on that, and then we'll probably start patching up some of these patches a little later. Hey, next day, camera died. I continued to work, so I'll just kind of get you up to speed here. So I ended up finish welding these little brackets in. Again, these are going to be kind of what I'm going to use to make sure that the mount for the 6-point harness sub harnesses, the ones that go down between your legs, have something solid to secure into. So this is just 1/8 inch plate that I welded these little L brackets onto and then welded to this whole assembly. So this is all one solid assembly now. Now what I'm going to do is I've got some JB Weld. This is seam weld. Basically an epoxy. So I'm just going to clean all this up real quick, and then I'm just going to go ahead and seam weld all these patches. And then I don't know why I didn't think of this sooner, but I'm essentially just going to put a little ring of seam weld around each of these holes and then just put a plate over it, and we'll just JB Weld these patches shut, because there's not really a need to weld them. Got all of it. This should set up pretty quickly, so I shouldn't have to wait too long for it to set up at all. And then what I'm trying to figure out right now, or look at, your lap belts, which will come in, and I think if I can't use this one, I'll just drill a new hole. I got weld in nuts, so I just have to drill a hole wherever I deem, and then weld in this nut, and then I'll screw in. It comes with a little eyelet that the seatbelt harness clips into. And then I've also got this one right here. Alright, I was reading a little bit more on how to properly mount a harness and seat, and realized made a whoopsie. So no part of the harness can be mounted to the seat or the seat structure. This is part of the seat structure, and this is what I was going to use to make sure that the sub belts had a solid mounting place. As you can see, I welded them quite nicely, unfortunately, at least for me, to the seat structure. So I got to cut these off, and then I think what I'm going to do, because unfortunately it's, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but this region right here is one of the main kind of frame rail supports for the vehicle. So I think it's a good couple inches deep. So inside this pocket, which is right where I need to put the sub belt mount, is a hollow cavity, which means I basically need to cut down one of these to probably like a little 2x2 square, weld it to the floor right here, and then drill a hole through it. I've got my weld-in nuts. I'll have to weld in a nut to actually secure it. That's the bad news. The good news is this side I can probably just do a backing plate and a nut and like the large washer and make that side work. But this side's gonna be a little more work. Kind of sucks when you spent time fabricating something and then you find out you did it wrong. But that's life. We're here to learn. I'll know for next time. part of the thing I'm struggling with this build is, like, I don't necessarily know all the rules, so sometimes I don't know, like, when I need to do something prior to doing something else. It's part of what I'm trying to figure out. But I got those knocked out, so I'll probably just weld in some plates right here. Hell, maybe both these. I'll just weld in plates on both sides.